Yo, what's good, everyone? This is Shields. Welcome back. Welcome back. Today, we are going to react to who built these ancient skyscrapers. As you can see, these are the skyscrapers in question right here on the screen. This is in Yemen. I believe these skyscrapers are pretty old. We're going to learn a little bit about what they are. It looks like they're made out of clay of some sort. Don't know how old they are. I'm guessing ancient. So ancient's got to be BC, right? So yeah, let's learn us a little bit about these skyscrapers. If you're new here, we do history content, science content, all that type of stuff. So if you like that, hit that subscribe button and let's jump right into it.
Somewhere in the desert, there's an ancient city that seems unreal. This is the oldest skyscraper city in the world. Hundreds of apartment buildings dominate the skyline. Some go up to 11 stories.
11 stories is crazy for an ancient city.
Modern skyscrapers are made of concrete and steel, but this city is 2,000 years old and made of mud.
Oh, it's mud brick.
Who built this city? Why are the buildings so tall? And how did they do
It looks very modern. Is it used today?
This
doesn't look modern, but there's modern, like, there's obviously ventilation and AC that we just saw.
Is the old walled city of Shibam.
Shabam. And it's walled. A lot of ancient
I've been
cities stood
fascinated
up.
by the city ever since I saw this picture. At first, I didn't believe my eyes. This ancient city just looked too modern. Even comparing it to a modern place like Manhattan, part of the city of New York, Shibam is special. This city is 330 by 240 meters. This is about the size of 3 apartment blocks on Manhattan, part of the densest city of the United States.
Is New York the densest city in the United States? I guess it is.
With a population of 7,000, Shibam is way more densely populated. And it's way
How did we know there's 88,000 people back then in this city?
older. They were already building tower houses in Shibam during the Roman Empire.
It's 2,000 years old then. That's what he said. So yeah, Roman Empire for sure.
It's also special when you compare it to its surroundings. People use mud brick across the region, but nowhere do they build as tall as in Shibam. I thought that was strange. What I found even stranger is how abruptly the city ends. It just sits there in the middle of the desert.
Well, I mean, look, it's walled off, so maybe they just have like a specific ordinance they had back then in terms of territorial governance.
There seems to be plenty of space around it. There are even other buildings close by. So why did they build so high? Going into an investigation on a city like this starts with curiosity. It's about wanting to know more about the
This is an ad, we're skipping it.
world around. Print. More important, are scientifically good. You heard mention. Shibam is in Yemen, a place you've probably only heard mentioned like this.
As fears grow of a wider war in the Middle East, explosions rocking the capital of Yemen.
It's one of the worst humanitarian crises we've seen in almost a century.
Yemen's Houthi rebels say they've attacked another cargo ship in the Red Sea.
14 million people that are sort of at risk of famine.
But I wanted to show you a different side of this country. So instead of going there, I reached out to every filmmaker from Yemen I could find. And eventually, I got in touch with Mohamed.
مرحبا اسمي محمد اللشولي.
Mohamed visited Shibam and talked to the locals. What we found was a story of humans adapting to a harsh environment, of an ancient city with a vibrant community, and why this city might be in danger. But before we let the locals tell their story, why even build a city in the middle of the desert?
Maybe it was an oasis back then.
The geography of Yemen gives us the answer. In this map, orange and red is where people live. Most of Yemen is empty. The majority of the population lives in the west, in the mountains, where you can find the capital Sana'a.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
And on the coast, in places like Aden.
Yeah, coastal makes sense though.
The middle of Yemen is a big desert where almost no one lives. But here, in the cracks of a plateau, you can find human settlements.
Looks like a river basin.
Like Shibam. These cracks have been created by something humans can't live without: water.
Yeah. Erosion.
Shibam is located in a valley of the Wadi Hadramaut. A wadi is a riverbed that is dry for most of the year, but in the rainy season, the river flows. The water can be stored to drink and can be used for irrigation. People have been settling close to wadis all over desert areas. Because of this water, Shibam became an important step in a huge caravan network. A network that carried spices and incense between Africa, the Middle East, and India. It's a strategic location.
أي شخص يريد أن يحكم وادي حضرموت لابد عليه أن يخضع شبام سيطرته.
Shibam was mentioned in Greek sources and was part of many kingdoms and empires, but it was completely unknown to European explorers. It took until 1893 for the first Western travelers to visit. They saw a city that rose from the desert, like the steep side of.
So they discovered it in 1893. A lot of discoveries happened around the beginning of the 20th century. So this is just not something different, but it's really interesting. I think the big thing that's interesting about this is the population density, but also the height of the skyscrapers. The population density in the area where it's confined to might make sense related to how the water was.
Of a cliff.
But it wasn't a cliff. It was Shibam.
This is rendered.
500 houses all crowded together in a narrow space in the middle of the valley.
Keine der Städte Hadramauts macht einen so ausgesprochenen Eindruck einer Wolkenkratzerstadt wie die große Stadt Shibam. Shibam ist das Chicago der Wüste.
The Chicago. Why is it the Chicago? I don't know. It's just an
I found it interesting that some of the
analogy.
first travelers compared this city to Chicago instead of Manhattan. Maybe because this building from 1885 in Chicago was seen as one of the first skyscrapers, a building that had a skeleton made of steel. But in Shibam, all buildings are made of mud.
A city made of mud.
The people that settled here had to deal with extreme circumstances. It is often hotter than 40 degrees Celsius. There are not many trees to use for construction, and the desert stone is so tough it can only be used for foundations. So the people here have to rely on other local materials. They mix sandy soil with some clay and straw to make bricks that dry in the sun. 16 workers can make 8,000 bricks a day. A house they build can stand for
8,000 bricks is crazy.
300 years, and maintaining the city is a constant process.
البيوت هذا لما نجي بيت هذا منهار يعني فيه خلل فيه نصحح خلل فيه.
Mortar.
رمم ونمحط نقرش هو قراش.
So it's continuous, like it's just interesting, you know, like structurally speaking. Like, is it just an extra coat fix it, or do you have to? I mean, it looks like that person was like demolding it a little bit, and then you add another coat. Very interesting.
The material they use influences the design of the buildings. To support the weight, the foundation of the homes is wider. The walls can be 1 meter thick at the base, tapering to 30 centimeters at the top. After laying the bricks, they are then covered with mud plaster. This can be a challenge for higher floors.
The floors are interesting.
Parts of the buildings are then covered by white lime plaster. This helps to make them waterproof. This construction is perfect for the climate. The high buildings act like trees, limiting sunlight from hitting the walls. The thick mud also acts as an insulator, keeping the heat out.
So smooth, so perfectly created.
And the white lime has good reflective properties. Why wouldn't you just put white lime on the whole building then? Well, lime is expensive, so it then becomes a status symbol. The most important buildings are completely covered in them, like these mosques in the city. But there are other ways to show status. To personalize these apartment blocks, the doors and frames are made from carved wood in the most beautiful patterns. But building so high also has its challenges. The houses don't have elevators, so how do the locals deal with this?
بالعكس يعني نحسها زي الرياضة طالعين نازلين جميل يعني عادي شوفها تعودنا يعني ما بين في اليوم تقريبا بين دورين 3 أدوار فنشوفه أمر طبيعي.
I mean, that sounds crazy.
الحيط ترص رص لما تكبر في السن تتعب شوية.
But it's not only residents that have to get up. The city may be ancient, but Shibami residents want modern amenities like refrigerators and air conditioning units.
Air conditioning must be expensive.
بعض الأحيان الدواليب ما تطلع في الدرج فيسحبونها من الشارع يمسحونها.
But maybe I mean, there's no like power company, is there? Or is there a power company? Or is it more or less individualism and family oriented?
لين السطوح خاصة لما تكون بعد الدور الرابع يضيق.
So the stairs get narrow just as the walls get narrow.
والله ضرورة الحاجة من الاختراع يقول لك فنحن نطلع الحمد لله في كل بيت موجود ثلاجة.
The different floors also have very specific uses. The ground floor is used for storage or shops. It was often closed off for defensive reasons. The first floor can be used to keep animals.
That's insane.
The second floor is for the men, as a formal reception area. The third floor is for women. It's the main family area, and also where you'll find the kitchens. Floors above that are for sleeping arrangements of different family members. But the question remains, why did they build so high?
I mean, you have to build high when you can't build wide. So maybe it's just due to the area. Maybe it also answers that. Maybe the two questions are answered the same way. Why is it so packed together? Why is it so tall? Because there was no place outside of these walls. It's gotta be, right?
Ancient people liked to settle on elevated mounds. They were easier to defend from wild animals and invaders. When the space is limited, you have to go up. According to archaeological excavations, people were already building 4-story houses in this region 2,000 years ago. And still Shibam is much higher than other cities.
Die Häuser sind so eng aneinander gebaut, dass ihre Fronten die Stelle von Stadtmauern vertreten.
ولأنها عاصمة وادي حضرموت كلها أطماع فيها. فكروا في التوسع الأفقي ليس لديهم المساحات
Yeah, there was a lack of them.
الكافية في التوسع
700 AH, which is a different calendar, so our 14th century, so 1301.
There was a lack of space because 500 years ago something happened that changed Shibam forever.
A flood?
2 floods in 1298 and 1532 washed away huge chunks of the city.
بقيت المدينة حاصر بالمياه كشبه جزيرة.
Wow.
It's these floods that shaped the city we see now.
That makes perfect
From then
sense.
on, the only place that was considered safe was on this elevated mound. For 500 years, the people have had to resist temptation to build a bigger city.
I mean, we have to also look at the floodgates, and that could possibly open up the horizontal expansion, obviously.
So it was built by the people that have been living here all along.
And it's so interesting because, you know, two different parts of the world. We just watched a video a week or so ago about the Netherlands, so the Dutch, and how they've had to combat floods, but a different way. You know, it was a lake, and they, you know, created these dams, and then they actually dredged and built islands, and then used those islands as actual communities. This is totally different. It's more or less a peninsula graded on this upper elevated surface, and then people are having to build upwards because of the unknown floods of this ancient river basin. So it's really such a contrast, but such a similar problem, but a different outcome.
This has led to a site that's so special, it was placed on a 1982 UNESCO World Heritage List.
Oh, it needs to be.
But there are dangers to this peaceful community. In 2008, a huge cyclone approached Yemen. This led to severe flooding. This image shows where the flooding happened. Some buildings collapsed and people died, but it could have been much worse for Shibam. The age-old knowledge of only building on high ground helped. Another threat to the city is a raging war in Yemen.
اجتياح رفع الاسعار ما العامل ما قدر ينشأ بأي حياة ما قدر يسرح كل يوم شاقة عمله محزور هيرته محزورة.
In 2009, a terrorist killed 4 South Koreans and their guide.
ضربت مع الحرب وهذا كبير يعني انفجارات برضه بجوار المدينة في وسط المدينة خارج المدينة هذه أثرت الكثير علينا الآن نفتقد.
And that's a huge part of the taxation is the tourism, and they miss out on that.
قيود السياحة نهائيا وهذه أثر على كثير من الأسر.
The dangers to the city withstanding, it is still around today. It's a city where locals are extra proud.
نحن أبناء المدينة هذه نفتخر بمدينتنا ونفتخر إن نحن ننتمي إليها.
مجتمع حلو، مجتمع متكاتفين ومحافظ.
Yeah, very oriented, like family oriented, but more or less as a community.
مجتمع محافظ. ويعني متعارفين، تعارفون كل واحد جنب الثاني، يعني منطقة واحدة زي القرية مكبرة.
طعموا غدانا نطعم غداكم، فهذه أشياء موجودة نتعامل مع الطلوع بهذا.
It's so connected. There are even passageways that link individual houses.
وبعض البيوت حتى يكون فيها ثلاث الأدوار.
فبإمكانهم أنهم يمروا من البيت هذا والبيت هذا، بل إنه بعض الأسر تجتمع.
It's easy to forget there's so much more to places in the news than whatever the current headline is.
Of course.
Shibam is an amazing example of the way humans adapt to their situation, living in a harsh region with limited resources, in a climate not really suitable to humans, but still making it work. Keeping alive an ancient tradition.
Humans are interesting, man. We make things happen. We do things that are unknown.
Climate fit the buildings. It's no wonder that this place is a World Heritage Site and has a special place in the hearts of citizens.
شيء جميل. يعني شباب خلافا عن باقي المدن أشوفها.
What an interesting video, guys. Like we learned a little bit about, of course, Yemen. I think like Shibam is such an interesting use case of like really specifically looking at the environment you're in and adapting to it and becoming, utilizing, the Darwinism of the strong will survive. And they created a strong place to live with the elevated surface, the buildings, how they built that. It's such an interesting thing. Wow. Like my knowledge around Yemen has grown significantly, and I hope yours did too. I'm especially, glad to, watch and learn and react to things that are not in my backyard, something that is so common within humans but so far away. So what a video. Loved it. I hope, Shibam stays active and expands as the life of humanity continues. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Like I said in the beginning of the video, if you like these types of videos, hit that subscribe button. Recommend some videos if you have some in your head. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Peace out. Bye-bye.